We've got immigration officials under threat by gangsters right here in the United States of America. In other words, the gangs are on the same exact side of this equation as elected Democrats in places like Chicago. Those birds of a feather, they do flock together. We've also got updates for you on it's really, I guess this is like, go ahead, Spygate 10.0, where we now find out that sitting United States senators were spied upon by Jack Smith and the Biden Department of Justice. Brand new information just made public and briefed to United States senators by a guy called Dan Bongino, who just did that Monday, gave a big briefing to a bunch of U.S. senators. We'll dive into the details there. And then we'll be joined by the great Haley Karania live in studio today, joining me in Washington, D.C. We've got a massive show. Hey, so, it's hard work being an immigration enforcement officer, not because of the president of the United States. No, actually, President Trump has been wonderful. He's helping ICE out. He's helping Border Patrol out, all the DHS operations. They're weapons free right now, and thank God. They're able to do this job of deporting a lot of people from our country with all the support in the world from the president of the United States. That part is good. But Democrats are doing everything they can to get in the way of immigration enforcement right now. And that's at a number of levels. Look at what's happening in Congress right now. In Congress, Democrats have shut down the government. Now, for most of us, that's a perfectly fine thing. We don't normally care. In fact, the federal government, not being a part of my life is great. In fact, I want the president to take advantage of this and fire a bunch of people. There's a great opportunity. Please, Mr. President, use it to your advantage. Use it to the fullest of your powers right now. But one of the effects of this is that ICE officers, Border Patrol officers, members of the military, these guys are not getting paid. These paydays are coming up, and they're not going to be making this money. Now, eventually, they'll get their back pay, which is fine. But tell that to a young military family. Tell that to an entry-level ICE officer. Tell that to a guy who's just getting started in his Border Patrol career, and he's got a family to support. Yeah, don't you worry. A couple of paychecks from now will eventually get you all that back pay. No, that's miserable what these guys have to go through. And you can thank Democrats for that. The reason that these guys are not getting paid right now, Democrats. Meanwhile, in the cities and states that Democrats run, nightmare for ICE officers, nightmare for Border Patrol, nightmare for the guys who are trying to enforce immigration for a number of reasons. Among them, you've got the mayor of Chicago, Brandon Johnson, the least popular BJ in America. This guy declared yesterday that in the city of Chicago, where I'll remind you, ICE officers were just subjected to a terror attack this past weekend. Chicago police were told, hey, don't respond to the scene of the crime. Don't go help law enforcement as they're under attack. That just happened in Chicago. And now you get Brandon Johnson going on national television yesterday and saying, you know what, we're going to make things worse. We're going to make things worse for Chicago. Here's Mayor Brandon Johnson, cut one, saying that now the city of Chicago will include no-go zones for ICE. ICE is not allowed to operate on city property in an American city. Listen to this from the mayor.
Today, we are signing an executive order aimed at reining in this out-of-control administration. The order establishes ICE-free zones. That means that city property and unwilling private businesses will no longer serve as staging grounds for these raids.
No more staging grounds. No more using city property to be able to do your job. Now, Brandon Johnson may not be familiar with this, but we fought a civil war over this issue. It's called the Supremacy Clause of the United States Constitution. If the feds want to go in and enforce law on American property, on public property in the United States of America, yes, that includes city property, they are absolutely not just entitled to do it, but constitutionally protected to do it. Law enforcement can go in and enforce the law, whether you like it or not, Brandon Johnson. And what the hell is wrong with you? You root against immigration enforcement? You root for more violence in your city? You know, yesterday he used an analogy, and I talked about it yesterday on the podcast. It's crazy that we talked about this, and then Brandon Johnson came out and he inverted it perfectly yesterday. He said yesterday that right now the American right is looking to launch a civil war in the United States. It's the right that's looking to launch a civil war. Now, you tell me whether or not that makes any sense to you, because think about it. You've got the left is assassinating conservatives, assassinating Charlie Kirk, gunning him down because they disagree with what he says. The left is in open revolt against the federal government of the United States. The left is refusing to assist in going after criminals in all of these states. The left is protecting an institution that's designed to exploit underpaid foreign nationals for cheap labor, for votes, for electoral college advantages, to rig the congressional seats in the United States. That's what they're doing right now. So you tell me, if this is a civil war, what side do you think you're on, Brandon Johnson? Because it sounds like the side that Democrats were on in the first place was open rebellion, insurrection against the United States. You're just doing it again in this century. Here's Brandon Johnson yesterday. Take a look here. I'm going to pull it up on my screen. Here's Brandon Johnson talking about, we're in a civil war. The right wants us to be in a civil war. No. We want peace. You want chaos.
I said very candidly that the right wing in this country wants a rematch of the Civil War. I want that to sit in right now, because the President of the United States of America has declared war on the people of Chicago and people across America.
That's right.
He's more interested in giving billions of dollars to other nations, while farmers in urban cities around this country are literally being destabilized.
Oh, this guy's not looking out for the farmers. He's not looking out for anybody. He's not even looking out for the people of his own city, Chicago, which has sky-high murder rates, which the president is trying to bring down. And the least you can do is just do what they're doing in Memphis, Tennessee. Work with the president to stop this chaos, unless, of course, that's what you want. And so why wouldn't we conclude that all he wants is chaos? That all he wants is chaos. He wants that chaos, and he wants to blame President Trump for it. What an awful human being. And this guy finds himself in league with the worst people on the planet. That includes gangsters. Outright gangsters. Breaking on Monday evening, last night, we find out from a news website called CWB Chicago. A bunch of outlets were confirming this after they ran this report. From the feds, Latin Kings leader puts out $10,000 hit on ICE commander in Chicago. The Latin King Gang, which started in Chicago, is supposed to represent Puerto Ricans. Now, for those of you playing along at home, what country is Puerto Rico a part of? The United States of America. So the gang members are not only criminals, they're retarded. They think that killing immigration enforcement officers is somehow going to protect Puerto Ricans? What in the world are they talking about? Federal prosecutors say a Latin King gang leader offered a $10,000 bounty for the killing of a senior immigration enforcement officer after an ICE agent shot a woman in Chicago this weekend. A source familiar with the investigation identified the intended target as Commander Gregory Bongino, who has been leading the Border Patrol's high-profile Midway Blitz operation in the city. Juan Espinoza Martinez, 37 years old, known by the street name Monkey, is accused of offering a $10,000 reward for Bovino's murder and $2,000 for information about Bovino's location. The case, which was unsealed on Monday, outlines how Martinez allegedly used social media, encrypted messaging, and his position within the Latin Kings to rally members of the gang after a police-involved shooting involving Border Patrol in Brighton Park on Saturday. So you see here, for those of you watching, rumble.com/Vince, here is Monkey's text message, and he wrote $2,000 on info cuando lo agarran, meaning $2,000 on information when you get him, $10,000 if you take him down. Latin Kings, LK, he writes, with a couple of hand signals in emoji form on him. So they're calling for hits on top immigration officials. These are bounties for the assassination of the guys who you and I are entrusting, who the people of Chicago would like to see come in and clean up their city. This is who the gangsters are trying to kill. So, one, I lift up a prayer for men and women of law enforcement, of ICE, of Border Patrol, who are trying to do these jobs. It's a prayer of protection for people like Gregory Bongino, that they can do their job with tremendous amounts of success and safety. And then two, in case you're wondering, and I know the chat is wondering, Conrad's 5, the latest, asked us, can he be arrested? What about arresting this guy? Wonderful question. I love that question. That's the question I had too. And here we go. Latin King's gang member has been arrested. They got Monkey. They got him. Latin King's gang member arrested in Illinois after placing a hit on the commander at large of the Border Patrol, Chief Bongino. This is from Department of Homeland Security, released overnight. The Department of Homeland Security announcing the arrest of that criminal illegal alien and Latin King's gang member who placed a bounty on Gregory Bongino. On October 3rd, 2025, just a few days ago, 4 days ago now, a confidential source provided information indicating a hit had been placed on Chief Bongino by a member of the Latin King's street gang. ICE, Homeland Security investigations identified the individual who placed the hit. That's Juan Espinoza Martinez. We know him as Monkey. And arrested him on October 6th in Burr Ridge, Illinois. That would be Monday. They placed this arrest. And for those of you looking on rumble.com/Vince, we've got the image up of Monkey dressed in his high-vis yellow shirt. Look at this idiot. Was he hard to find? No, he stood out. He had his high-vis shirt on. And there he is. And he was arrested. Look at that. DEA, ATF. I'm seeing FBI in there, U.S. Border Patrol. I'm not sure who that one in the middle is. There's another one in there. It's a lady cop who arrested him. Isn't that wonderful? Look at that. So everybody arrests this idiot. They face him towards the camera. The rest of them face away from the camera to protect their identities because they don't want gangsters putting out hits on their families and themselves. And he's getting what he deserves. I really hope when they took him into custody that he put up a struggle. I really do. But yeah, he is tiny, isn't he? He's elfin. They took this guy. Would they find him inside the Keebler tree? How did they get a hold of this guy in his high vis shirt? Anyway, they took him into custody, and it does kind of look like he peed his pants. Monkey peed his pants. Look at that. He's got. Poor guy. He was all scared, rattled. Good. Anyway, he was trying to kill immigration enforcement, and that didn't work out. That's right. FAFO, monkey boy. That's exactly right. He wet himself. What an idiot. So he got what he deserved, and that's what happened to Monkey. But the reality is, like, think about this. So you get Monkey putting out a hit on Gregory Bongino, and Democrats are all in with the Monkey. The Democrats are all in with the Latin Kings, this gang. You know, Brandon Johnson puts a target on the back of immigration enforcement, and then Monkey tries to pull the trigger. That's the 1-2 punch that the left is leading right now. Over the weekend, you had the governor of Illinois, Jelly Belly Pritzker, J.B. Pritzker, on television telling people that ICE are a bunch of violent racists, that they're chasing people down because of their skin color. They're going after black and brown people. These are the kinds of poisonous lies that the Democrats are telling. Yesterday, I played audio for you of J.B. Pritzker saying that there were little kids being put in what do they call them? Oh, zip ties. They said they were zip tying children. Zip tying children? What are you talking about? The second I heard him say it, I was like, he's lying. And it turns out he was lying. There was nothing to that. In fact, this lie, the left has been pushing this thing about a zip tie. I'm going to show you this if I can find it for you. It's so crazy. A CNN panel this weekend was doing this too. CNN, Daily Caller had this piece. CNN spreads anti-ICE lie after being duped by TikTok skit. And they said a CNN panel falsely insinuated on Saturday that Immigration and Customs Enforcement was arresting a young child in a zip tie after citing a TikTok video that had been proven fake. You want to take a look at this? Let me see if I can even pull up TikTok. I don't have a TikTok account. Look at this. On the screen, If you can, I'll let you adjust for this. I'm driving Gee crazy right now because I'm putting all this stuff on screen. Look at this. Somebody put this up on screen. It's like a 3-year-old or a 2-year-old who can barely walk for the first time. It's obviously a skit. This is not a real arrest of a child being put in zip ties. And yet this is going around on like Blue Sky and TikTok, and these lefty idiots are sharing it with one another like it's really happening. Like Donald Trump is zip tying 2-year-olds, to get them out of the country. It's so crazy. It's they just lie, and they become so accustomed to it. It's done so completely shamelessly. So Jelly Belly thinks that kid was busted by ICE. It's so stupid. It's unbelievably stupid. Oh man, they've got the mental capacity of a Latin Kings member. So it's really remarkable. But it's a tragic situation we find ourselves in, where you're looking at guys like our immigration officers. They're under serious threat. We can make light of how dumb these people are, but their dumbness is also very dangerous. Our immigration enforcement officers are under constant and relentless threat, and they're not getting the backup they deserve. They're not getting the backup at all. The city of Chicago screwed those people over, screwed our immigration officials over the weekend when they allowed them to be boxed in a terror attack, and they had to get out of their cars and they had to shoot their way out of that awful situation. And they had no cops to help them out because the cops were told to stand down. Do you think that cops in Chicago wanted to respond to that? They damn well did. They definitely did. I've been hearing from Chicago police sources telling me they absolutely wanted to respond. They were shut down by their leadership. What a disgrace. I've got a lot more ahead on the program for you, including what, stuff our friend Dan Bongino has discovered at the FBI and just briefed a number of United States senators on. The details on that ahead, Haley Karenina ahead. So much more to get to here on this episode of Vince. Yes. No, Chris 4242, totally right. You're on the wrong side when the gangs agree with you. When the people who use violence in the pursuit of power agree with you, then you kind of know you're on the wrong side. Yeah. Speaking of abuses of power, we're finding out brand new information about what the hell is going on when Jack Smith was leading a deranged, tyrannical investigation and indictment into the former and then future president of the United States, Donald Trump. Here's what we've learned. The great Dan Bongino, deputy director of the FBI, has just briefed United States senators and told them that they were being spied on by Jack Smith. Jack Smith tracked the private communications and phone calls of nearly a dozen Republican senators during his supposed January 6th probe, according to the FBI. So Dan, basically what we find out is Dan went over to Capitol Hill yesterday with some urgent information. He needed to tell these United States senators that their phone calls were being intercepted by the Biden administration. They were being spied on. Dan's the perfect guy to do it. So what was the first book? It was Spygate, right? So maybe we get a Spygate 2.0, maybe that changes, And I'm going to get to that. Sam H is in the chat. He's saying something about, they've been listening to us for years. Nobody's held accountable. I'm not expecting that to change. And Sam, I get your pessimism. I'm right there with you, buddy. And here's what the thing to know about the FBI is. The FBI is the Federal Bureau of Investigation. So Dan and Cash and the FBI right now, under their leadership, they're doing their jobs. Their job is to investigate, and if it's somebody who works for them, to fire, get rid of, hold accountable. They've done that. They have fired hundreds of people at that agency. That's their job. Whose job is it to prosecute? Well, that's the broader United States Department of Justice. That's literally the prosecutors at the DOJ. That falls to Pam Bondi. Pam Bondi, who, by the way, has been testifying this morning to the United States Senate. No doubt we'll have clips of that on the big national radio show coming up later today. But on the FBI side of things, they're doing some investigations into what the hell happened in that agency. And they've been looking in particular at an operation called Arctic Frost. Arctic Frost. And what they discovered was that the phone calls of Republican Senators Lindsey Graham, Marsha Blackburn, Ron Johnson, Josh Hawley, Cynthia Lummis, Bill Hagerty, Dan Sullivan, Tommy Tuberville, and then Congressman Mike Kelly of Pennsylvania, one congressman in there as well, all being spied upon by the Federal Bureau of Investigation. This is brand new information. And somebody earlier in the chat said that this is like a combination of, this is bigger than Watergate and Whitewater. And you could take any number of American political scandals and combine them all. And this is bigger than all of those. Remember, the CIA at one point was caught spying on the United States Senate on a specific committee in the Senate. And they, Brennan lied about this. John Brennan, who was the CIA director at the time, he lied about it to try and cover it up. It eventually came out he was lying. Democrats were on the receiving end of that surveillance as well at the time because it involved authorities for the CIA, funding for the CIA. So the CIA was spying on the Senate in its own self-interest, its own deep state preservation of power. But here, what you have is a number of Republicans who are being spied on by the Federal Bureau of Investigation under Jack Smith. And the point of this is what? What do you think the point of spying on these Republicans is? Well, it's to gather information about them to hurt them. It's as simple as that. They wanted to bring about ways to go after these guys, including through prosecutions. And so listen, if you will. Here's Senator Ron Johnson yesterday referring to this appropriately as completely outrageous and laying out the timeline of when these guys were spied on. The timeline matters a great deal because it kind of gives the game away. Here's Ron Johnson, cut 6, yesterday.
This is outrageous what has happened. I just want to give you a timeline of this. I think you've already got the FBI sheet that shows the number of members of Congress that were targeted. Representative Kelly, Senators Graham, Hagerty, Hawley, Sullivan, Tuberville, myself, Senator Lummis, and Blackburn. Now, this memo was dated September of 2023. To put it all into context, the Mar-a-Lago raid occurred in August of 2022. Jack Smith announced the indictments against President Trump in August of 2023. So this is almost 2 months later. They're casting this net, this fishing expedition against members of the Senate and the House. Again, I've been investigating this with Senator Grassley. This doesn't surprise me, but it should shock every American.
It definitely should. And that timeline, there's going to be a lot that's said about this. You're going to see it all over conservative media, especially, and you should. People who are completely outraged that these senators were being spied on. But I just want to emphasize that timeline he gave to you. It's 2022 when Jack Smith and his team with the FBI are rifling through Melania's underwear drawer at Mar-a-Lago. In 2023, that's when the indictment drops in August against President Trump to try and, of course, just before the election, to stagger his ability to become president again. But then it's September of 2023 that they seek to spy on these senators after the Trump indictment's already out. So after whatever investigating Jack Smith felt like doing into Donald Trump as a predicate to indicting him, then he starts spying on United States senators. Do the math on that to establish that these were legitimate law enforcement actions. Go ahead. Go ahead, lefties. Go ahead, Jack, wherever the hell you are. Provide a justification for why you're spying on members of the United States Senate. What is that? It certainly sounds to me like it was the beginnings of an operation to try and make their lives a living hell if the left continued to control the levers at the United States Department of Justice. That's what it sounds like to me. So I want to engage you in a thought experiment. Imagine, I know this is horrifying, but imagine if Kamala Harris had become president of the United States. What would our Justice Department look like right now? Who would be being prosecuted right now? Which of these United States senators would be in a world of hurt right now because of the ongoing surveillance and thin pretext, politicized, tyrannical prosecutions that the left would be conducting right now? We already saw what this looked like in practice with Donald Trump. They spied on his campaign. They spied on him. They created hoax information as a predicate to accuse him of all sorts of awful things, colluding with America's enemies to steal an election. We've seen what they're capable of. Just imagine what kind of mission you just stopped from happening. What I mean by that is every one of these Republican senators have you to thank for stopping further injustices from being carried out against them. You voted for Donald Trump. You voted to give Republicans control of the Senate. You voted to give Republicans control of the House. Were it not for that fact pattern, right now, we would not know about the extent of the surveillance on these United States senators, and they'd be in a world of hurt. They'd be feeling it like the Trump family did for years. So, to be clear, a massive scandal. And do you not read anything into this? Dan Bongino himself personally gets this information from the FBI, and he hand walks it over to the United States Senate yesterday, and then he briefs every one of these senators on the way that the government was abusing them. This is a massive, massive story, and I can't wait for the day when Dan is back in front of a microphone when he can talk about it too. And my plan is to do an interview with him on the subject as well. I think I'll have a lot to say. Haley, it is so great to see you.
It is so great to see you. We never get to do this, so it's a lot of fun, and I'm happy to be in D.C.
Did you have any part of your career in D.C.? Were you in New York?
I was in New York.
Yeah.
So I used to travel to D.C. quite a bit when I was working at Fox, because then, something big would happen. The whole Kavanaugh thing was happening. We were here all the time.
Yes.
So I used to come to D.C. frequently, but I've never lived here, and I haven't been back in probably 4 or 5 years. So it's been a while. I'm seeing less homeless people.
I was about to ask. I was going to say, what is it like? I mean, because that is the time frame. I mean, 4 or 5 years ago, there's homeless encampments. Union Station is miserable. There's like zombie people who are ODing on fentanyl. Now it's like it is legitimately way cleaner. The White House, I mean, obviously the president is prone to a slight amount of overstatement. He's like, there's zero crime anywhere. It's
right. No, it's a utopia.
Yeah, you can walk around with like money just hanging out of your pockets and nobody will take it. It's not quite that, but it's a million times better than it was.
And I will say I did not go to the Union Station area. So that's really where a lot of the homelessness was, and that's like where the Fox building was over there. So that's where I spent most of my time in DC a few years ago. But so I wasn't back there, but I was honestly impressed with how clean it is.
Yes.
And I was walking around yesterday trying to do some man on the street interviews. Not a lot of people were speaking English by all the monuments and stuff. So
you were by the monuments?
Yeah. So it was hard to get some interviews with people who understood what I was
talking
about.
And it was all non-English speakers by the monuments?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, which I thought was interesting.
There's a trick to having done journalism in D.C. for a while and dealt with a lot of reporters for Man on the Street. You went to the right place. So you really should be in the kind of the tourist areas, because when you get outside of them and you get onto like K Street or near the Capitol.
Well, then it's just people who work here and live. Yeah.
And they're all either they're very hyper resistant to even pretending like they want to tell the truth to a microphone. Right. So they're just like, no, I have no interest in that whatsoever. They're all guarded because they see the media all the time. Maybe they know how bad the media are.
And I feel like because my whole career has been in the media, if someone ever came up to me with a microphone, I work in the media. You don't want to talk to me.
Yeah.
Right? You want someone who's totally unbiased. You want someone who's just walking by on the street. I'm walking like into my job at Fox News or at Newsmax or wherever I was working.
I don't know.
I'm like, you don't want to talk to me.
But nowadays, I think I would jump all over a chance to be on a Man on the Street. If somebody stuck a microphone in front of me and had no idea that this was the business
just
I was
a troll.
in, I'd be like, dude, I'm all in.
I'm giving them exactly what they want.
I have no idea who you are or what you're doing, but I am in. I agree 100% to doing this.
Yeah.
So I've talked to you a couple times about this, but I do want to, let me just ask you this because I think the audience is interested too. I don't think everybody knows your origin story, so I do want to ask you a little bit about that. You mentioned you worked at Fox. You worked with and for Sean Hannity, right?
Yes. So my first job ever, I interned a lot. So I interned maybe 4 or 5 times. My first internship was in local news, and I thought, well, this is boring.
Where?
On Long Island.
Okay.
So that's where I'm from. And I just thought, I love news. I'm in the right industry, but I need to think a little bigger. I'm more interested in politics.
Yes.
I'm interested in stories that impact more than 1 or 2 people.
Was your ambition to be on camera?
No.
So you went in just because you were you liked the news gathering experience or what?
I liked storytelling, and I knew that I didn't want to be bored. And the news industry is not boring. It is a lot of things, but it is not boring.
Yes.
And I didn't want to sit at a desk 9 to 5. I'm bad at math. So I knew I wasn't going to, be a CEO of something. I knew that. So I wanted to do something entertaining and fun. And news was, well, I studied film and television.
Yeah.
And my dad said, well, you better get a job that pays you. If you're going to study film and television, you better get a job after all of this. After all college and everything, you better make it worth it.
He's right.
So I figured, okay, at first I kind of wanted to go into the film side of things and do set design because I'm very creative. But I figured, okay, well, let me make my dad happy and go work at a news station because I can get health benefits. I can get like a legitimate job that does, I know where my next paycheck's coming from. So the news side of it was a little more stable than the film side. So I kind of went down that route.
Oh, yeah.
I took a studio television production class and just fell in love with it. Once I was in the control room, I thought, this is what I want to do. I want to be pushing buttons. I want to be in that news gathering sense that you were talking about.
One thing I discovered about media that fit really well for me when I got into news was the reality that the news cycle changes so rapidly that your every day is not always a blank slate. Like, you do have to remember a lot of things that have happened in the past in order to contextualize what's happening in the present. That said, you don't have huge projects that extend for months. So like when you're coming up in education, when you go to college or something, you've got this like long project, you got to write a 50-page paper or whatever it is. Like it's like weeks and weeks of effort. You're like driving you crazy. You're writing it for an audience of one. You're just speaking to a professor. Media is a totally different experience. Like, if you hate long projects, you're going to love the news media.
Right. Every day is different.
Every day is like a blank slate. Like, boom, you have to focus like crazy on your work for the next 24 hours.
Right.
And then as soon as my shows are done, as soon as your show is done, what are you doing? Are you thinking a lot about the show you just did? No, you're obsessing over the next one.
Yep, which is nice. It's always very forward thinking for the most part. But yeah, so after I interned a few times, I interned at Fox News, and I interned there 4 times.
Yeah.
So they kind of had to hire me I was like the cockroach that wouldn't go away. They
You're
couldn't kill me.
Yeah.
So I knew that I wanted to work there. And one of my internships was in advertising and on-air promotion. And I had a wonderful boss who taught me how to write, which is, I can't tell you how important that skill is in news. And being able to write concisely and get people's attention, that is so helpful. And he was amazing. And he took all the interns under his wing, everyone in his department. I mean, truly, I was very, very lucky to have a great boss.
Well, knowing that helps you organize your thinking, too.
Yes.
So even in your verbal presentation, you start to become aware of like, oh, that is a really important detail that I need to emphasize.
Right. So he was great, and I was good at the writing, and I was writing promos. So if I was promoting, I was working at Fox at the time, so I was promoting all the shows and what their interviews were going to be.
Sure.
Like, tune in tonight to, at that point, it was Tucker Carlson Tonight or Bill O'Reilly, Megyn Kelly, like all these names that are no longer in the establishment media, they're new media, right? But I was promoting whoever they were having on the show.
Yes, and that's not a small task. So, like, your job is, not every guest is a name.
Right.
So you have to make a decision. Is the topic more important than the guest? Is the guest more important than the topic?
Exactly.
How am I convincing this audience to even tune in and watch this?
Exactly. So that is exactly right. And so I did that, and I loved it. I did it for 2.5 years. And then I kind of got into this line of thinking where I'm going to use the word FOMO, because fear of missing out.
Yes.
I'm working at this massive news company, and I'm not working on a show. I thought, I'm missing out. I'm missing out of a huge part of the industry. I'm promoting what these people are doing, but I want to be part of it.
Right.
I want to be the movers and shakers. I want to be on the editorial staff. I want to be deciding what stories get covered and what doesn't. I don't want to be the one promoting it. So I ended up working on this massive marketing campaign with all of the talent at Fox. And I met all of them and got a chance to meet all of them. And most of them are wonderful people, and they take your time, and they're just very wonderful.
I like how you said most.
Yeah, I'm not going to get into, exact details, but yeah, not everyone is awesome in this industry.
There is so much, and I don't want to say scandal, but that just saying most is enough to pique my curiosity.
Yeah.
I'm like, I love the little gap that doesn't include most.
Most people are great.
Yeah, that's true.
Some are not. I'll leave it at that. Because I don't want to get into too much trouble on the show.
You're independent now. You're free.
I know, but I just don't want to say anything too
no,
negative
you're a nice
about
person.
anyone.
You're good.
But, Sean Hannity, for example, is one of the most wonderful people I've ever met in the industry, and he's one of the best bosses I'll ever have in my life. And I was so grateful to work on his show. Like, he is one of the greats. So I was able to talk with him at this marketing campaign, and he said, well, if you ever want to work on the TV side of things, my executive producer was over there. And I literally just pivoted my feet and went over to go talk to her. I said, I will do that. Went over to his executive producer, and I probably bothered her every Monday and Friday. I think I emailed her, if there's an opening on the show, let me know. If there's an opening on the show, let me know.
Yeah.
Every Monday and Friday, I would just check in, over the weekend. Hey, how was your weekend? Let me know if there's an opening on the show. Finally, after weeks of doing that, a job opening opened up on the show as a booker. So I booked his guests for maybe 2.5 years, ended up writing for him, field producing for him, just kind of growing and growing and growing. And I absolutely loved every second of it. Then I moved over to Newsmax.
By the way,
to write more.
You condensed all of that into like half a sentence, but just so people understand what you're describing, this is not easy work that you just described it very quickly. It's hard. It's relentless work, especially booking, because not everybody is responsive. It is not easy. You've got to be like beating people's doors down. It doesn't matter. I mean, it helps that you work at like a place like Fox with Sean. It increases your response rate, but it doesn't diminish the amount of effort that you have to put in to do these jobs. So these are, so you put in real work.
It got to a point, Vince, I don't know if this has ever happened to you in this industry, but I started getting work nightmares where I would dream about, I was working so much that I was working in my sleep also. So we kind of had this rule, and this kind of went for everyone in the building, and I was talking about this with Andy and Justin last night, but when you work at the #1 cable news network, and this was at the time, and we really, during the first Trump administration, we had no competition. Rachel Maddow was our only competition, and she was maybe the 5th watched show, and then CNN was like the 20th. Like, we didn't even have to worry about CNN at the time.
That's right.
So there was a lot of internal competition. It was a lot of Fox bookers fighting with Fox bookers to get the best guests. So we were working 24/7.
And by the way, the hosts do that too.
Right.
So the hosts of those shows, like I know just having talked to them about this, they'll look at the ratings and then they'll be like Tucker will be like, we beat Hannity last night.
Right.
And Hannity will get the ratings. I don't know Hannity as well as you do. I met him once. But I guarantee you he looked at the ratings. He's like, thank God we beat Tucker last night.
Right.
Like, it's like, that's just the way they do it. Like, they don't have anybody, at the time especially, they didn't have anybody else to compete against, so they just competed against each other.
And it was, yes, there was a little bit of internal competition, like, we want to beat him, we want to beat him, we want to beat him. But
it's good. I think it's healthy.
We were very happy to just have Fox be the winner, So if Tucker won that night or Hannity won that night or whatever, it was like, great, Fox won, but we got to beat him the next night.
That's fun. So how do you meet Dan Bongino? How does that happen?
So I booked him on Hannity a bunch of times, and it started off that we would book him to fight with Geraldo Rivera 2 nights a week. And I was explaining this to Andy last night too. Yes.
You were responsible for that.
Yes. So we got this minute-by-minute report, and they would bring us in for meetings, and minute by minute of the show, we would see the ratings. And it was like this up and down. You could see what topics did well, what guests did well together. And they would just give us an idea of what guests did well together on a panel, what topics did well. And when Geraldo and Dan fought about immigration and other hot button issues, the ratings would just spike like crazy. So we would sit in these meetings and they would say, Haley, you got to book these people. We got to do this twice a week. We can't just do it once a week. We have to do it twice a week. Then everyone loved Dan so much that it was like, let's get Dan on standby Monday through Friday. Like, he's going to be a fixture on this show. So I ended up talking to Dan almost every day, if not every day.
So
and,
when you were
awesome.
so in those, before we get to you joining Silverlock and everything, but when you're talking to Geraldo, is there ever a point where Geraldo's like, I don't want to do this anymore?
No.
Like, this is driving me crazy?
No.
No, Geraldo was all in?
They were all in. They were very respectful. It was not that they were playing a part for the show, but it was like, we're friends.
Yeah.
We're going to fight and we're going to debate right now. But there's a level of respect.
Wait, what is it like dealing with Geraldo? I remember I saw him at one of the Republican conventions, and I had listened to an interview with Geraldo Rivera. I had heard him on the we're showing on screen Dan Bongino.
These are the iconic debates.
Yeah, that Haley arranged. So I talked to Geraldo in a green room at a convention. So a green room is like a holding area for you to sit before you go on television on Fox or whatever network you're at. And there's Geraldo. And I had listened to an interview with him from years ago. Howard Stern had interviewed him. And during the Howard Stern interview, he talked all about how he had he had snuck into this mental hospital and he had exposed all these people being abused, and it was very gonzo. Someone had given him a key, so he climbed the wall and got in. It was all very fascinating. And it was the first time when I heard that interview, it was the first time I didn't think of him as like a cartoon character. I thought well, that was kind of crazy, kind of wild. There was something cool about that. And so I see him, and I don't know Geraldo, but I figured, well, I'll just tell him that I thought his interview was neat. So I was like, hey, I heard your Howard Stern interview. I thought it was great. And the first thing he says to me is, why is everyone talking about that Howard Stern interview? I did that years ago. He starts complaining that I brought it up. He was just instantly bitching about and I was like, I don't even. Why did I even?
It's an iconic moment. Sorry.
I'm like, why did I even talk to you? Why? Yeah. And then he just seems grumpy all the time. Is he grumpy all the time?
He was always very sweet to me and always very kind and respectful. So I can't add to that, but yeah. Some guests would be okay with getting canceled. Some guests would be very angry. So it was a lot of touch and go, relationship mending, being a booker as well. A lot of hurt egos, bruised egos, people thinking that they're way cooler than they are, way more important than they are.
For sure. Okay, so then at some point you make the decision. Do you go right from Fox to this?
No.
What was the sequence of events?
Kind of. So I went over to Newsmax because when you're working on one of the top shows in the world, they don't want you to be trying things out. I mean, it's the best of the best working on the show. And I really wanted to learn how to line produce, and I wanted to write monologues. I wanted to shape the top of the show, and I wanted to kind of make mistakes.
So
and you can't make mistakes on the top show in the world. So
everything you're saying is so still you had no interest in doing the camera work.
Not at this point.
You were all in on just I'm going to be the best damn producer I can be.
Yes.
Okay.
And so I went over to Newsmax because I figured, okay, there are less viewers. It's an up and coming network. Let me not make my mistakes on air. I don't mean it like that, but I don't want to make my mistakes on the number one show on cable news, but I do want to learn, and I want to get into the control room. I want to push the buttons. I want to see what I can do and learn and grow. So I kind of wanted to go through those growing pains on another show, and I wanted to write a monologue. Sean already has the best monologue writer in the world. He's not going anywhere, so I needed to grow somewhere else.
Yeah.
So I went over to Newsmax and I wrote for Sean Spicer, which was awesome. He's also incredible.
He's a good guy.
He's so nice. And I'm going tonight to an event to honor him. He's being promoted to captain in the Navy. So
I'll see you there. We're going.
Great.
Yeah,
so
me
I'm
too.
very excited
That's cool.
for him. But yeah, so I did that, and I learned very quickly that line producing was not my strong suit. So I'm glad that I didn't make my mistakes on the number one show, because you have to do a lot of math line producing and doing live television and making sure that all the sound bites fit into 60 minutes and with the commercial breaks and hard breaks and all this stuff. It's complicated. I was not built for that. So I figured, okay, well, I'm glad I figured that out now. And it was there when I started kind of blowing up on TikTok. I wasn't really supposed to post my own political content at Fox. There's some rules against that.
Right.
When I went over to Newsmax, the rules were a little more lax. So I started posting my own political, my opinions and things online, started blowing up, and I went to them. When I was still working at Fox, I told them, we need someone who's younger talking about TikTok and all these things that are blowing up. And they were a little resistant to it. I pitched a podcast. I pitched shows, segments. I said, you need a younger person to be like a tech analyst.
Because eventually your audience is going to die.
Right.
And it might be good if you build a young one, too.
You need someone, and anyway, I don't want to be disparaging towards anyone, but I figured we need someone who's actually in this movement and on social media to discuss it, not just, anyway. So I mentioned that to them, and they kind of pushed me away, not because it wouldn't have been good, but because they're not really ready to take risks like that. So I went over to Newsmax. I also pitched shows like Nightly Scroll, which I'm doing right now, where I'm scrolling on TikTok. I'm talking about commentary. And again, they were also not really prepared to take on a podcast like that. It was a little more traditional. And because I knew Dan Bongino so well, and he was such a great mentor to me, I asked him, I said, if I want to do a show like this, how do I break in? How do I move from producer to podcast? And that's when that kind of switched for me, where I thought, well, no one's doing this, so I guess I'll do it. And I asked him what I should do, and he said, don't ask for permission, ask for forgiveness. And I didn't listen to him. And maybe I should have, but he is right in that you kind of just have to do it so that people then take you seriously.
Yes.
You have to have credibility. You can't just say, hey, please give me a chance. They're going to say, okay, well, show me what you can do. And because I was under all these restrictions working at these networks, I couldn't show anyone what to do.
It's one of the cruel but definitely real things about media. I remember, like, for instance, at Fox, you will know this having done booking. One of the rules in television is you're not allowed to do TV unless you've done television before.
Right. So it's very hard to break it.
Well, so wait a second. Hold on. This rule doesn't make any sense. How does one do television if they've never done television before, if the requirement is that you have to do TV? The truth is that booking producers like yourself, need to see that person have done television literally anywhere else so that they don't fall flat on their face when they appear on screen.
Right.
And so you need proof of concept. The same is true in podcasting. The same is true. The predicate to Dan asking me to do this was, first of all, I had a big radio show in D.C., but then I would fill in for him on his national show, and he said it was just straight up the marks, man. You came on, you did the show, the audience was totally locked in, they liked what you were producing, so you were obvious. You were the guy I was like, hey, come in and do this. But that's one of the things. It's like, so when you ask that question, how do I start? You start by starting.
You just do it.
You just do it. You do it, you prove you can, and then more doors open along the way.
So this is what happened. I was living in New York City. All of my friends started getting married and moving out into the suburbs, and I didn't want a random roommate. I was 28 years old. I said, I'm not living with a random person from Craigslist. This is not going to be good. I wanted to move to a red state, first and foremost, but somewhere that I could afford to live by myself. So I looked at jobs in Nashville, and I ended up getting a job with Fox News Digital and Outkick, which is a sports podcast network, but it's where sports meets politics meets pop culture, and the politics and pop culture is more my lane.
Yes.
But I ended up getting more interested in the sports and where all of these intersect. So I was overseeing 6 podcasts there. Then, to your point about proof of concept, I said, I'm just going to do this damn podcast. Like, I just need to do this.
Right.
So I told my boss at the time, I'm going to do a YouTube show. They were asking, we need weekend content. I said, I'll do it. I'm going to do a weekend show. It's going to be weekly. It was basically, if you watch my show, Nightly Scroll, here it is. This is my podcast at Outkick. It was called Screen Time. So if you watch Nightly Scroll, you'll know that
Did you really need those glasses, or were those?
Those are blue light glasses.
Oh, are they?
Yes. They're blue light glasses. So
do you believe in that? Does that work?
I don't know. It was just kind of like a gimmicky
Justin's
thing.
shaking his head no. Justin's here in studio
they don't
too.
Work. People say that red light is very good for you.
Yeah.
And I know that you do the bond charge and things like that. Yeah. The red light saunas, red light everything, and this is emitting blue light at your face all day long, which is apparently very bad for you. So I don't know. I don't know if the blue light glasses work, but I did try it for a little bit because my screen time is very high. But yeah, so I did a segment this show called Screen Time, and that's basically what scrolling time is on Nightly Scroll, where the last 15 minutes of my show, I'm scrolling through videos and whatnot.
Sure.
Dan Bongino saw clips of Screen Time, and he said, if you're not under contract, you're coming with me. So that's how it all happened.
That's fantastic.
Yeah. So yeah, proof of concept.
I love it. And okay. And then finally, for your show, so people understand, you can get a lot more Haley every day. You can sign up for her great program, The Nightly Scroll, and you can also actually watch it on Rumble, rumble.com/Haley at 6 p.m. and Eastern time. And here's the question I have for you. When did you make the decision to allow Andy to talk so much on your program?
I don't even think it was really a decision. I think a lot of what we do is just roll with the punches, and it all happens very naturally. And honestly, I don't want to listen to myself speak for a full hour. And I welcome Andy piping up and tuning and, saying whatever, he has to say, because then I get to drink my water.
That man.
And it gives me a break.
That man can
I love
talk.
It.
I'll tell you what.
We have a lot of fun.
I'm not even, we're not even doing a show, and he'll be calling me because Andy books for our program. That's how we ended up with Haley today. Andy booked her. But he'll call me and be like, hey, here's who I'm thinking about booking. And then I really don't get a chance to talk on those calls. Mm-hmm. It's just Andy just straight through for 45 minutes. And then I'm like, hey, can I go now? Is that okay? We good?
Holds you hostage. No, but it's great. I was joking with Andy yesterday because someone had DM'd me saying, you're so mean to Andy on the show. And I said to Andy, we were joking, I said, am I mean to you? If I'm mean to you, please let me know. I didn't think I was. It's funny how people read into things, but.
No chance. What's that, Justin? Oh, he's a Bud Light drinker.
Yeah, he drank Bud Light on the show last night.
Like I said on your program, I got in your chat last night and I said,
Yes,
look,
I saw.
at Silverlock, we accept Andy's lifestyle choices. It is great to see you here.
It was so great. Thanks for
Thank
having
you for
me.
being here in D.C. We're gonna apparently go party with Sean Spicer tonight.
Yes.
Sean Spicer, for people who know, he's a Navy reservist. He's being promoted to Navy captain, which is the equivalent of like a colonel in the Marines or the Army. Very cool. Very, very cool. We'll get to do that. So we'll hang out some more.
Yes.
I'll have more of a conversation with Haley on her great program. And it has been so great to have the best audience anywhere joining us today.